morning to everyone. Today we're going to be looking at the Guatemalan Civil War, and we have some ground things to cover. So our end in mind today is to analyze, research, and discuss the causes and effects of the Guatemalan Civil War. All right, so we'll be focusing on that end in mind. This is what we want to achieve by the end of this lesson, to have a clearer and deeper understanding of why it happened and the effects and roll-up things that we're still living with of the Guatemalan Civil War. So first of all, we will see our ground rules for the discussion. For our discussions, which we will have on and off as we go through the content, we have specific rules. First of all, every time we are having a discussion, you raise your hand, right? You raise your hand, you want to say something, I'll select the one who speaks. There will be one speaker at a time, not more than one, just the one that raised his hand, and I select it. And then we are all listeners. What does this mean? That we will focus on what that person is saying, and only that person is giving us the information at that point. We are all active listeners, and there will be follow-ups. So one person will be discussing something, and then I'll ask someone else to follow up on what they have been saying. What does this mean? You need to pay attention to absolutely everything that's going on and everyone that's speaking. Everything in the discussion is important, okay? So the follow-ups will have to build up on what the previous person has said. If someone said, well, I think this is because A and B, the second person can say because C and D also happened, or I agree that A and B happened because of this and that reason, okay? You cannot just go and I agree and that's the end of it. No, you have to build on it. So that is how the discussion and our discussions will be building on. So having those ground rules set, any questions?
No.
Fantastic. So we will start with the discussion of the Guatemalan Civil War, and who can tell me exactly when that happened? When do you think the Guatemalan Civil War happened?
Don't know.
There's a clue there.
It was in 1960?
Yes, it was from 1960 to 1996. So 36 years of war.
Okay, I think it was 35.
A lot of time that Guatemala stood out amongst Latin America for having the longest civil war that this continent has seen. So that's a bit of infamy for Guatemala. So what is a civil war? What do you think is a civil war?
Usually it's when the people is against the government and whatever rules or like the way they're leading the country.
So yeah, so people like versus government.
Yeah.
That tends to be like a standard for it. And what is the main objective of a civil war?
To make your rights valid. Or
To make rights valid, okay.
and like either make the government change the where they're going or just get somebody that will
Change government, make rights valid, okay, that's good. And who usually is the winner, or how is it determined on who wins a civil war?
Nobody
Wins a civil war?
Nobody wins in a war.
All right, so there in the broader spectrum, yes, wars are horrendous and nobody really wins when this thing. But how do we determine if that war was successful, or who determines it?
I guess the people.
The people, the same people that revolted?
Well, they're the ones that are looking to get something out
Or
of
does
it.
the government decide who won?
Well, if you're going against the government leading or the way they're doing things, I don't think they get the right to choose. I'm
Are we
assuming.
assuming that
But
civil wars always end up with people winning the civil war?
maybe when they get to a point where they both agree.
When they get to a point where they both agree. Well, in a lot of civil wars, that is the case actually, because nobody gets to a point of a clear and defined winner or loser. There is just a fading away. So, a civil war, is it a positive or a negative thing?
I
What do you think? Something positive, something negative?
I guess it has both.
It has both. What do we mean?
Well, if it has, I think it's positive because means people is getting involved with what's going on in their country and they're actually realizing that things are not going the right way, so they're taking action to make a turn and a change. It has a negative way because it's a war, so of course that means there's gonna be damage. So,
Can you give me an example of a positive civil war?
what we had at the end, we had like something positive when it ended, like
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to the effects of this war in itself. But say any famous popular war that actually happened that you or most people regard as positive.
the last one that it was like lasted like for a day
The
in
last
Russia.
one. All right, more in history terms, perhaps.
Oh, I I don't know. Can't recall right now.
All right, say independence.
Okay.
Any
Okay. Yeah,
independence.
they got to the. Okay. Yes.
Usually, they start with civil wars.
Yeah.
They are regarded as positive by the winners, the nations that were created through the civil wars that resulted in independence.
So that was the people.
They were the people at
Okay.
that time, yes.
Okay.
So definitely ask England if they thought that the US Civil War was positive. Not so much.
Okay.
The Spaniards, did they think that Latin American civil wars that led to the independence were positive?
Nah.
Maybe not so much. Yeah? So it depends a lot on the connotations. This independence, civil wars, usually tend to have a positive connotation, like yay, the people won, the freedom was achieved, and things move forward, right? But there are many civil wars that are regarded as negative, right? Mainly when the cause that the civil war started did not win, they're regarded as negative because who's telling the tale?
The government.
The government, because they subsided, they eliminated the civil war, and they get to a point when they think, okay, this was negative. They tried to overtake the government. We took them down. So, yay, hooray for the winners. Usually, the victors are the ones who claim the whole fame for the war. So, having those things in our background will help us through the civil war in Guatemala, where it's very murky. It's quite one of those civil wars that didn't have a clear winner or loser. That, as you well said, everybody lost in a lot of ways. And we'll analyze a little bit of what was the cause of all that war, all that struggle, and what are the effects that we are still living with from that war. So, the following activity, first of all, we shall read that article that I gave you on the beginning of the Civil War, and after you're done reading it, we'll come back with the discussion. Right. So, everyone done with the article?
Yep.
Wonderful. Now that you have taken notes and highlighted all the important bits from the article, we are going to discuss a little bit of what you found. So, why did the Civil War begin? What did you understand from it? Why did it begin?
Well, they try to have like a coup. Coup, is that how you say a coup?
A coup.
A coup, like from within in the armies, right? Take over.
And do you remember why the coup started? Why they wanted to take over? A coup is basically when powerful people try to take over
Oh wait, yeah, I
all
just
the
remember.
power
Yeah, yeah,
from
yes.
the
They were
main
just not
president,
agree
right?
with the way the government was dealing with our lands and everything, with like the foreign people. In this case, the states. They were giving more power to the states over what we had, so they were not like okay with it. And since they were not listening to the people, they were just tired of it. And people within the army, like supported all of this to the people, and they were just done with it and tried to overthrow the
In
president.
most cases in our history, we have had coups dealt by the army. The army has always had these very strong, influential people who have taken all the power away from the presidents at the time. So, yeah, definitely they were not happy of the steps that the president at the time, Idigoras Fuentes, was taking. He was giving lands to other people. He was aligning with a lot of the anti-communist MacArthur ideals of the time. So this bunch of army guys go and say, "We will not have it. We want power."
Right.
And as you read, that starts the war. We follow through and we get to the point where Inigo de Fuentes is no longer there. So this is the guy who started the war because they didn't want him there. So now he's not there. Why is the war continuing?
Because they was the people that took over still doing the same thing. I mean, like whoever stay in his place just follow the same. No, wait, they just wanted to take the, well, they had the power and they just wanted to take out of their way people they just didn't like and was not agree with them. So instead of following the the um the reason they actually started, like the cause, they just used the cause as an excuse to get rid of people that just did not agree with them at all in anything.
Peralta decides this is a good opportunity to not only take power, but use it in ways that will be politically beneficial for the party, right?
Right.
So he starts moving things in a different direction, and now he's not only persecuting the guerrilla, now he's persecuting political parties, he's persecuting any opposition that he might find.
Religious and stuff.
Anything that does not agree with his way of thinking
Right.
goes away. So Idigoras is not there anymore, but now we have Peralta Sordia, and he is head of state. And now, more than ever, not even in the beginning, the guerrilla feels the need to exist, and they declare Turcios Lima the head of their army. So Turcios Lima is all over fighting the army, and 2 years after that, boom, Lima's dead. So now, Lima is not there. The head of the guerrilla is gone. The head of the state that started the war is gone. Why are we still at war? Why do you think we're still at war after the head of these two parties that started the war, they're gone? Why are we still at war?
My guess is selfish reasons. Because I mean,
Such as?
I think that there was a point that they just lost the view of the original cause. They just went through like a change of just trying to rule without a real reason, or not really. They just wanted to have power.
And
Both
we can
sides, I
find
think.
power is a very, very influential thing.
Yes.
Power is the one thing that drives most civil wars.
Yeah.
Okay? So when these two figures do not exist anymore, and the cause itself, which was stopping Idigoras Fuentes from having this horrendously corrupt government and giving land away to foreign territories, and he's not doing it anymore. Peralta was here to solve this, right? Because Peralta also came from the army. While Irigoras was fighting the guerrilla, Peralta's nicks in from behind from his own army and does the coup anyway and takes power from Irigoras, saying to the people, don't worry, I know how to deal with the guerrillas the way Irigoras would never have. And what does he do? He sits on the throne yet again. Okay? So let's analyze a little bit of what they've done through a couple of videos done, one by MR13, that is the November of 13, the guerrilla movement, and one by the army, and we'll get back to the discussion. All right, so those were the videos. As you can see, very different one from the other. So who do you think made the first video?
La guerrilla.
Yes, the guerrilla, very obvious, right? And who made the second one?
The government, the army.
The government, for the army itself. So what purpose do those videos have? What do we call that sort of material?
Publicity.
It's a type of publicity, which is called
Campaign.
pro pa
Propaganda.
Propaganda. Propaganda. So what is propaganda?
Like promoting or like the reason, information, cause.
Is it open and telling you the truth about something?
Not really.
What does it do?
It
What
tells
is
you the positive, of course, and the bright side of things, so you can like incline. Is that how you say that?
Get inclined
into like either way.
All right, so yeah, it's a bias. That's what we call it, bias. Right? It's a biased view of something. Propaganda will try to convince you, manipulate you, persuade you, if you will, into buying into what they think. So the first video is propaganda from the guerrilla saying, we have the truth. We know what's right. We are fighting for the people. We are fighting to make conditions better for everyone. Where are they trying to do this? By the time they shot that video, most likely Turcios Lima was not longer with them. Even though they used a speech from Lima within the video, it was sort of way of continuing with the idea, you know. Having a martyr within the ranks always helps. And the same with the government. You see that video was getting into people's heads on what the army should be perceived as, how things should be. Army good, guerrilla bad, you know? Even the song that implies people from the army are our brothers, our sons. They are the ones who are fighting every day, and we need to support them in every single way that they can. So those two are definitely with different purposes. So are they, the videos, are they subjective or objective?
Subjective.
Subjective, because they portray just one single point of view, right? A specific one. And who holds the truth in the conflict?
I
Who
don't
do
know.
you think holds the truth in this particular conflict?
I think everybody owns their own truth.
Everybody has their own truth. That is the truth. There's no way that you can say, well, this is bad and this is good if you have not analyzed every single one aspect of it. People don't tend to fight for no reason. They tend to fight for a true reason. Let's focus on the original fight, the original struggle. Everyone thinks they're right. The guerrilla thinks they have the obligation to fight for everyone's rights, to rise up, to get there, right?
Right.
The government thinks, whoa, I need to stop these people disturbing the peace, they're hurting everyone else, they're hurting the state itself, which should be ruled differently. At the beginning, it might be that way. Everyone has their own truths, right? And it will develop a sense of righteousness depending on the propaganda that you hear, on the things that you listen all over the place. So bear that in mind, especially with well, the times that we have today. You know, every 4 years that we have elections, we have a lot of this,
Yeah.
and we need to analyze deeply what are the intentions, what is the reach that each one of those pretenders to the throne want to bring to the table. Okay, so for the next part, I will ask you to make predictions since we don't know how this actually turned out. Right now, we're seeing what caused it, how people started behaving in between those things. So, what I want you to do is to write 3 paragraphs. One will be a thesis statement that clearly defines how would you, if you had the power to summon both sides and sit them down at the table at that time, how would you suggest a solution to this conflict? What would be your solution? So for this, you need to analyze the causes. You need to research a little bit more on what happened, why did it happen, and so the first thing is a thesis statement on what is your solution, then a paragraph considering the reasons for the conflict, and 1 paragraph that outlines the steps that they need to take to resolve the conflict based on your thesis statement. All right. So your solution, the problem, and the steps that your solution requires to be achieved. That is what you need to write down, and then we'll see your answers. All right. So, having done that right now, or if you will be sending it later for me to revise, let's go over what we in the beginning set out to achieve. Okay? So, what did we analyze? Can you tell me something we analyzed?
Well, the causes that started a civil war.
Okay, we analyzed the causes. Can you tell me one conclusion that we reached through that analysis?
Everybody has their own truth.
Everybody has their own truth. That's wonderful. What did we research?
Uh, like what we used to know that the information.
Any information that we went
Well,
into to get those.
videos and newspapers and articles.
Yes. So we researched, we went into reliable sources that we can get information from. So those are the things that have. And can you tell me a new fact that you learned from that research? Something personal to you that you didn't know before, and that research just brought it to light.
Well, I actually thought that the leaders that were or that actually started the civil war were like from beginning to end, and that's not exactly what happened. It just was changing rulers over and over, and also during that like transition, the original causes were lost.
Yes.
So after a while, it was just a pointless war.
Imagine so much so that no ruler in Guatemala stayed for more than 6 years, and the war lasted 36 years.
Yeah.
We had tons of presidents within that. The peace talks that end in 96, as well, we should see in later lessons. The peace talks end in 1996 when we signed the peace, but they started in 1987. So it took a long time and international intervention as well to get to the peace talks. So, yeah, great. That's something we researched, and that's a new fact that now you have with you. And what did we discuss? Can you tell me something we discussed?
Uh, well, the like the way that they were promoting each other.
Okay, propaganda and everything. That's something we discussed. And one thing you learned from that discussion,
That they would just show you what they want you to see.
how people manipulate and they show you only that side of what they want. Okay, that's fantastic. So we've actually managed to analyze, research, and discuss some little bits of the causes and effects of this humongous topic that hopefully we'll get to cover throughout the whole lesson. But now we're a bit wiser. If you know the beginning, you at least know where you're heading, and hopefully by the end, and when we go through the peace talks and how we signed peace treaties, and you get to understand the effects that we're living today, you'll see where we started, where we are, and perhaps where we could go. All right. So well done. Great work. And see you next time.